Hello, everybody. Are we here? I think we're here. I think everything's working. Can you all hear me now? Fabulous. Oh, wonderful. I love to see it. Okay. Technology was fighting me this morning, but we made it work. I'm in my closet, so ignore everything behind me. But thank you all so much for joining us this morning. I am Tre'vell Anderson. I'm president of the National Association of Black Journalists in Los Angeles. And we're going to have a great conversation today about making the pivot. So I have some fabulous people here that have done and are doing this wonderful pivot. I wanted to start this first conversation off focusing on my generation because I'm going through these very questions that we're going to be asking right now. And so I'm going to allow each of our panelists to introduce themselves, take 2 minutes and give us a quick kind of idea of like your background, your bio, and what you're doing now. We're going to start with Miss Gia Peppers. I'm unmuting you now.
Wow, thank you so much for having this. One, honored to be here with so many incredible talent. So my name is Gia Peppers. I'm an on-air talent entertainment journalist. Originally from Washington, D.C. I live in Brooklyn, but I am escaping quarantining in New York, and I'm here actually in DMV with my family. So yeah, for the last several years, I've been working as a host and an on-air talent and a journalist with various brands. My first job in the industry actually came through my first summer at NABJ's career fair in New Orleans. It was like 2012 that summer. Got a job as an overnight desk associate with CBS Radio News in New York. And then from there, left journalism for like a year and then started freelancing as a writer for like Juicy Magazine and various like Vibe Vixen when that was out and things like that, just to get my clips out there. And then from there, I just hustled my way to every red carpet, every blog, every person that had a camera and access to red carpets, I was hosting for them. And so started to build my reel from there. And then I started to send it out. I was the in-arena host for the Washington Wizards for 4 seasons, which is why my jersey's back there. And then during that time, I also worked with Ebro Darden at Hot 97 and ran his site. And then also landed a job at that time as the associate editor of EssenceFest.com. And then after all of that, Essence Fest didn't keep staff on for the full year. What was this, like 4 years ago? But one thing I did notice while I was there was that the talent got paid way more than the staff or the journalists writing there. So I was like, I think I'm gonna try the talent route on 100% because I'd already been doing on air forever. But I was like, wait, so you're telling me if I'm on air and you book me outside, I get paid more and I can negotiate more rather than being on a staffer. So from there, I was like, okay, see y'all. And then I started working on shows like BET Breaks, and then started Black Coffee. We started that last summer, which was awesome. And then I did VH1's Black Girl Beauty, and I'm at 1/5 of Black Girl Podcast. So everything Black I've done, and that's pretty much where I am now. And and then now I'm also creating my own content. I have a YouTube show called Give You the Game. And so, yeah, those are the things I'm working on currently.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Next, we're going to go to the content queen herself, Miss Danielle Young.
Hello, everybody. Thank you. Yes, Gia, I'm about to sound like you. Take a deep breath. I have a very crazy journey through this game. I moved here to New York, which I am doing the pandemic here in Brooklyn. I'm from North Carolina. So I moved here 14 years ago, and I started temping, working at temp agencies, landed a receptionist gig where I used that time to write and apply for writing gigs and wrote on the side, worked at Macy's nights and weekends. Like I just worked. It was a lot going on. And I ended up landing a pretty steady writing position at this online thing called Chronic Magazine that literally got me in a lot of doors. I was writing about a lot of rappers, interviewing like rappers every single week. And that really helped me increase my skills. And then everything that I got through journalism was like word of mouth. I literally have never applied for a journalism job a day in my life. Like, I don't even know what that looks like. And it's so crazy because I was like, how does that happen? So I had made a couple friends through freelancing. I was freelancing for Nicole Bitchie at the time. Now she's Nicole Kane, XO Nicole. I was writing freelance everywhere. And a friend of mine hooked me up with the editor at Hello Beautiful. She loved me, but I didn't start immediately at Hello Beautiful. I started at Black Atlas, which is like Black travel. Thought I was going places, was not, was sitting at my desk to write about these faraway places, but I did well. I guess it was a test, and I was hired as an associate editor for Hello Beautiful, became a lifestyle editor where I helped build the brand. Hello Beautiful was very gossip, celebrity. So I got to help build the brand into a lifestyle destination as well, fitness, fashion, food, culture, just everything. And then from there, I got my job at The Root, another word of mouth. At first it was offered to me as a lifestyle editor position, but then when I interviewed, come to find out it was for a social content producer. Had no idea what that meant. But I was like, I know social, I know content, I can produce it. Here's the things that I can do. And it worked out. It really jump-started my video career. The Root didn't have much video when I got there, and I got to help build that. I created weekly shows for them on Facebook Live, which basically created like a talk show for Blackness, which was just, I think, ahead of its time a little bit, but also really cool because I got to do a lot, from Black mental health, Black Broadway, fatherhood, like everything was on the table. And I also was producing a lot of content around the same subjects, around Blackness, Black life, through a series called Out Loud, Talking Head Black People series, Our Thoughts Out Loud. And from there, The Root really put me on camera. I had a producer, an executive producer, Brooke Mentors, who was like, I just want to see Danielle Young do stuff. And I was like, me? Are you sure? She was like, no, trust me. It's going to be a thing. I trusted her. Created Judge of Characters. That helped me to find my voice as a producer, as a host. I took down white supremacy every week. People cared. Everything went viral, like literally every episode, like millions. My most viewed was 7 freaking million, where I was talking about Auntie Maxine, how Trump wanted her to be civil. Excuse me. So then from there, I really solidified like my space as a voice to speak up for Blackness, as a voice to speak up for women. And Essence had their eye on me for years, come to find out. Shout out to Yolanda Sanguini. We love you. I didn't want to go over there because The Root was so amazing. Like, I don't know if you guys know Danielle Belton, her leadership, Donna Bird, Lynn Pitts. Like, it was just such a powerful space to be in when you're Black and you're opinionated. It was amazing. The Root still is just like an amazing destination. So I didn't want to go, but they offered me producer and host. And I was like, I've always wanted to work at Essence my whole life. I'm going to do it. So I did it. I got to do Over Explainer, created Over Explainer Reacts, created pretty much every video that's on Essence, from the B-side, We See You Sis, all the Essence news, Essence reports. Black Girl Beach Day was my first assignment, went viral. So I've been able to like solidify my space in this internet age as a journalist and a producer and a host and a voice. But I jumped off the ledge. I'm out here by myself now, like Gia, made the pivot. I figured, what better time is any to bet on myself? Didn't know that a pandemic was gonna happen. So the timing was a little crazy, but it forced me to act. And I built Real Quick, which is an interview series starting on Instagram, literally just tapping people. And what was supposed to be weekly is now daily. It's crazy. I've had some I've cried on the internet because of it. I've had some amazing interviews, Robert Townsend, Lena Waithe, Cynthia Erivo, Tabitha Brown, and like the list literally goes on, and we're booked solid. Like, it's crazy. That's becoming a podcast. I'm writing a book. I'm writing Insecure recaps. Like, I have a column. So it's just
busy.
Girl, I'm sorry I took more than 2 minutes, I feel like.
You're good. Thank you so much. And then last but not least, we're going to go to my good Judy, Mr. Stafford. Tell the people about you.
Oh my God. Hi, everyone. It's so fun to be here. And Tre'vell and I have worked together and we are friends. So I'm so happy to be in this space with them and everyone else. So my name is Zach Stafford. I am currently a host and producer with Buzzfeed. I host a show called AM to DM. That is a morning news show and entertainment show that reaches about 500,000 people every day on Twitter. We have all the most amazing people stop by, all the big celebs, politicians, people I don't like, people I do like. Everyone comes on for an hour a day for a bunch of live programming. But before that, I started off as a journalist in Chicago after graduating there and did similar to everyone else. I was like hustling and freelancing everywhere. I had a column at the Chicago Tribune that I wrote every Thursday, but unlike Carrie Bradshaw, I could not buy Manila Blahniks off my column. So I had a bunch of other jobs, some of them not journalistic, but mostly all in the LGBT and POC space. But from there, hustled, said yes to everything, wrote everywhere, and eventually ended up at The Guardian, the London-based newspaper, as they started expanding to the US. And I'm kind of like a journalist, like I'm big into news. I have a big crime background. So I started reporting on this new movement people were paying attention to called Black Lives Matter, before we called it Black Lives Matter, really, in the mainstream. And from there, just spent years kind of telling the stories of our community through this really critical moment. And what we thought was going to be a cultural change, because we know things haven't really changed that much as of even a few weeks ago when people were still getting shot jogging. So from there, I was doing a lot of work in Chicago on Black lives and LGBTQ lives. And from there, I got recruited by a tech company called Grindr to build a magazine for them, which at first I thought was going to be like a nudie dick pic type of magazine. But it was the opposite mostly. Today it is not, because they've changed it again. But I built this magazine called Into that was a very LGBT POC focused magazine that did news, reporting, entertainment, YouTube videos, all types of content. But we were trying to show that queer people are really dynamic, and that if you center queer people of color, you can really reach the world at large. And we became the most read LGBT news site in the world really quickly. And then from there, due to a lot of other drama that has been in the news, I had to leave. And I went on to be the editor-in-chief of The Advocate, which is the oldest LGBTQ magazine in the world. And its sister magazine is Out, which is where Tre'vell was at with me. So for a brief moment in time, we were all there at the Pride Media, making some content and telling stories and going through our own things there. as media is going through its own things right now. So that's a whole other story I can get into. But from there, while I was at The Advocate, helping lead that team and help us reimagine what the oldest LGBTQ news magazine could look like today, I was asked to host the show with Buzzfeed. So I was doing both for over a year. So I think all of us are really good examples of not sleeping and hustling too much, and we can give advice on that, I'm sure. And then I left The Advocate a few months ago, and currently I've just been in New York working with Buzzfeed on the show. And during pandemic, we're not currently airing, so I'm working on developing IPs for Buzzfeed and other people, and figuring out how people get those Netflix deals and all those other docuseries deals. So I can talk about that process and really how you as journalists and creators can create an IP, but keep owning it and keep exploiting it and keep building brands around that. So that's kind of where I'm focused today, on how do you just hustle off one thing.
All right, well, I love that. Thank you. I'm unmuting everyone's microphone now because I want this to be a conversation. So don't say nothing shady under your mouth about somebody else, because we're going to hear it. Okay.
Zach, get my notes.
I said, Zach, you know how to do all the things. Hold on, fix my notebook. Brand, okay.
Is that a capital I and a capital P, or?
I got you.
Y'all are a mess. Y'all are a mess. Okay, so I want to, for all the people who are tuning into us right now, whether you're on Facebook or you're in the Zoom room, I have some questions that have been submitted in advance for our panelists that I will work into our conversation. But if you have a particular question, you can drop it into the Q&A function if you are in the Zoom room, or you can put it into the comments on Facebook, and I will see it there as well, so that we can pop all of that in. So to start, I kind of want to start with the question of like, how did you know it was time to start doing some other things on the side in addition to whatever that traditional journalism focus that you originally had? And I'll start with Gia.
I knew from the second I left my like third week at broadcast journalism 101 when I was a junior in college that I was never going to move to a small city in Idaho and be a one-man bander and be working a billion hours and reporting local news just to get to New York, the #1 market, when I was already in school at Rutgers University in New Jersey, and I was already interning and already working, already making the connections I wanted to make to work in entertainment, whether that was television, radio, digital. I was already making those connections. So I was like, my path will not be traditional. There's nothing about what I want to do that has already been done. The women that I looked up to, none of them had to necessarily take that same journey. So I knew there weren't going to be many professors that could tell me and help me map out my journey. I just knew that I was focused on getting to a certain space, and there were people that looked like their careers looked like what I wanted to do. But once I really realized how singular, so my dad is a journalist, and he's been a journalist for the past, since I was born. So for the past like 2 decades, he's been at NPR and the Associated Press, but he was hard news only. And he did great there. He was an executive producer of Morning Edition and various shows, and now he's an executive producer at AP. But what I realized was that reporters like weren't also able, I saw a lot of people that weren't able to sustain themselves. And so I was just like, oh, I don't really want that life. Like I want to figure out how I can hustle and make sure that I can create content on my own. And then once the game changed, like once social media became what it is today, every rule that they told you to follow, every class, everything that they told you to be as a traditional journalist almost went out the window, where actresses and influencers started to get hosting jobs instead of people who had been in school for years for doing this. So for me, I was like, okay, well, if there's no more rules as far as like these places where I wanted to be, then I'm going to have to create my own and be able to pivot at each new opportunity and each new obstacle that came my way. So I knew that my plan was never going to be traditional. And I also knew that whatever I wanted to do was going to be what I wanted to do. I couldn't be a person that was going to be at a desk all day. When I was at CBS Radio News, I was crying the last 3 months every day because I was like, I can't, I won't. And there are pros and cons, and I'm sure we'll talk about that later. But yeah, so I just knew from that point on, I needed to work for myself. My own brand is the most important brand I'll ever work for.
Danielle?
Oh, I was pointing because yes, the point was made. The point was made. Can you ask me the question so I can?
Yeah, at what point did you know that like the traditional of just like writing, I think that's the traditional way that we think of journalism, and maybe broadcast, it's like standing in front of on a particular set. At what point did you know that it was time for you to start exploring things outside of what you were doing initially?
I think because like I entered the game at such a point where the internet was already taking over, but it wasn't personality based, more so than just like, instead of buying the magazines, we're going to go to here.com. I've always been able to just like pivot with the times. Like my career literally has always just leaned into the next thing. And so I think it's just being that natural hustler. And to like Gia's point too, like literally working at these places, and then places that people would give their arms to work at, you know what I mean? But still yourself feeling like, and this is, shout out to Lena Waithe, because this is actually a concept that she was talking about in an interview that I did with her, the concept of golden handcuffs. And she was applying it to her selling a show, but I apply it to myself as far as in like what Gia was saying. I have this amazing job at this amazing place, but I'm handcuffed to your ideals. I'm handcuffed to your levels of comfort. You know what I mean? Like, I struggled a lot at Essence because they're a legacy brand and I am just me. And so that's really tough to fit in such a cookie cutter space. So you have to look at those things and think, okay, what am I able to do? And how am I able to continue to do the things I want to do? Which for me, my purpose is always going to be grounded in storytelling. And I got used to like thinking it looked a certain way. But once you open that up and unattach yourself to like what you think that looks like, you can open yourself up to doing that in various ways. So I'm all about the multiple streams of income. It's totally doable to have a day job and do that, but not when the day job is in direct conflict. It sounds like a bad word, but you know what I mean. When it's like, I work at Essence, but I'm trying to host this thing at Black Girls Rock. I'm trying to host this thing at NABJ. I'm trying to host this thing at, you know, anything. And it becomes an issue because it's like, what are you doing? So you just, you have to say to yourself, okay, if I can do this outside of being attached to this big entity, I can do this. You know, and I know Gia attested to that. So it becomes like you advocating for yourself and saying, it's not about actually working for a brand, it's about the job that I'm trying to do. So I think that's always been at the forefront of my brain as far as being able to pivot and see like what could work in multiple ways.
Yeah, to that end, Zach, I know your story, so I feel like I can, I won't spill too much of your tea. But, but I think to Danielle's point she just made, she talked about like, thinking, like knowing the brand that you're working with and working for, but also knowing what your individual purpose and your individual intention is in a particular space. When you went to Grindr and Grindr reaches out to you to start this publication, we all know what Grindr is, you know, about and what it's for, you know, okay. But, but here I want to bring up a question that we have from Lillian, and she asks, how does one like make a transition into these new spaces that aren't journalism, with only having a journalism background? And Grindr for you was, as much as it was storytelling, it was also learning a new tech platform.
Yeah. So for me, when I began to, so in that situation, you know, this is 2016. At the time I was at The Guardian, you know, I was the youngest columnist ever for The Guardian, you know, being Black and being gay and the youngest was like this really big deal. And, you know, I had a lot going there, but also there was a lot of issues, which we all know when you deal with big institutions and legacy publications, it's not all perfect, but you as the Black person have to make it look perfect because you're supposed to be so grateful that you're there. But I was dealing with my own turmoil there, and feeling like not being taken care of in the ways I want it to be. So when Grindr called and I had the meeting with them, it was, at first I said no. Like, they called me and I said, what would I be the editor of? Dick pics? And they're like, no, that's not what you do. And I was like, well, I don't. I was like, I would love that job privately, but my mom is not gonna be happy about it. So they were like, have the conversation with us, just fly out. And when I got there, I began to think about, what do I care most about in my career? And it was storytelling and reaching people. I'm very much a person that believes if someone doesn't hear your story, then it may not matter in the grand scheme of things. Like, you need to really touch people to move people. And Grindr was the largest and is the largest network of queer people in the world. There's 40 million users. And I was like, well, I can make that work. And I also, what I learned really quickly at The Guardian was, you know, I dealt with some situations where I like did a lot of high caliber journalism, won like all the awards, was getting all like the crowns. And then all of a sudden I was being thrown away, I felt, because I telling Black stories wasn't cool right then when Trump was running. So Donald Trump began running, and then telling these really critical Black stories became not as important as talking about this reality TV show host. And I saw quickly overnight that my journalism didn't matter anymore, and that made me feel like my body didn't matter. Yeah. So that was a wake up to me to be like, you know, I shouldn't be killing myself for these institutions that will shift and pivot from you in an instance when you're no longer needed. So I was like, well, I need to need me more then. And that's when Grindr called. And I was like, well, I'm good at storytelling. I know how to tell these complicated, messy stories. And I know that if you just give us an opportunity to get in front of you, we can prove that you made the right decision. So when Grindr made all the promises, and for the first year and a half I was there, they all upheld those promises, that they would give me free reign, that they would give me resources to kind of do what I wanted, and they gave me an audience. And once you get that opportunity, if you show up and you're prepared, that's when you can really make or break it. And that's when I knew for me that it was like, okay, you got to do the work for yourself, because when opportunity comes, you better be able to turn it on, show up and show out. And that's all you're going to be measured on. And you can't just think about, just because you get a job at the New York Times doesn't mean you're going to be great. You got to be great and then get the great opportunity. And then it all kind of comes together. And I think people get confused. They're just focused on like checking boxes and getting the right application in. But it's like, you can hustle your way into anything, but if you can actually do the work, then it doesn't matter. So I remember for many years, it was really about getting so much experience. I did work with Eater. I was like, let me try food journalism. And I spent a year working with some producers there to create food content that was also about race and gentrification. I worked with NPR some to figure some stuff out. And what I learned quickly was that being a freelancer, or someone that you can pop around for a bit when you're not just stuck in one space, which I think, Danielle, you talk about, like the conflict of, if you work for Essence, you probably can't call Ebony to do something. There's a conflict of interest there. But when you are a free agent, you can use that time to get a lot of no's. And I've become really like a big fan of getting no, because I use them as sites of learning how to get a yes. So when I find, that's where I go, when I pitch something and someone's like, that doesn't work for us, I'm like, well, tell me why, tell me how, what could work for you, what are you looking for? I do it over and over and over again. And it lets you get used to realizing that no's are never always a reflection on you. Your work can be good, but maybe they don't have the resources or time or whatever, but it allows you to have a more complicated situation, complicated understanding of rejection. Because rejection isn't always just like, you're the worst person and go crawl in the hole and quit. It could be like, you need to grow here, or maybe this is actually not that good for you. Like, just because that door opened doesn't mean you should walk through it, but maybe someone else should walk through it. So it's like, you got to take all these opportunities and just keep learning and growing and figuring it out. But at the end of the day, it really is about self-work. If you're going to pivot to being a content creator in this more broad term, because that can mean so many things, you better know what exactly your skills are, how those skills are different, and how you think those skills can keep growing. Because just because you step out of the house doesn't mean you got to stop doing the work. And that's something I learned real quick, especially when you're like out here freelancing.
To that end, that brings me to, we have a question that was submitted by John Davis, and I'm going to get to the questions that have been submitted inside the Zoom room. But he asks, how did you go about defining your personal brand and your professional brand, if they're even, separate, or are they one and the same? I'm going to start with you, Danielle, on that.
How would I go about defining them?
How did you go about defining your personal brand versus your professional brand, and are they even different?
For me, I think I'm a special case because I've just been myself and just so real on social media for so long. And that has been what people have attached themselves to for me. Like, they're like, I like that. I like how real you are. It has not always worked for me. It definitely has not. But it's the only way that I know how to be. So I don't necessarily think I have two separate brands in that regard. Because I feel like I'm just so wild and free in how I maneuver anyway. I mean, there's a lot that I don't share about my personal life. But there's a lot that I do because of the following that I've built. They are vulnerable people who are connected to me. So I think that wall is broken for me to feel separated between professional and personal. And also because the brands that I've worked for professionally have always fed right into the work that I do. I've always worked for Black publications, and I've always told Black stories, and that's what I want. So I don't think I've ever had to separate it. The only time I've ever felt a little bit different about it is my time at Essence. Working for a brand that is very buttoned up, very legacy, but they wanted me for the reasons of being unapologetic and being loud and being Black AF, but it didn't always fit. So I had to decide whether I wanted to change myself to fit into this or just keep being myself. And I just kept being myself. And I realized I had to separate. So I don't know if that answers that question, but I think because I'm so authentically me and because my work feeds well into my profession, like my work is me, feeds into my profession, I don't think I have a separate brand in that regard. So I'm
What
just
about for you, Gia?
Yeah, I agree with Danielle there. I definitely don't think at this point in the game where so much of what we do is literally connected to how much people like us or like what we produce or like how we are as people. It's almost dangerous to separate the two if you are looking to get into the space of entertainment and being a personality, a talent, a person on camera, and even not like I know pop-in producers who produce things and post their work all the time and say, you know, I produce this. Like the team on Finding BET is like celebrated when Issa just put their episode, a screenshot of their episode in the last episode of Insecure, or the last one before this, the block party. But I say that to say, if you aren't showing up as yourself right now, I don't know what the difference is, because when you go into these places and you even go to pitch yourself as a freelancer, a journalist, talent, whatever, they're going to look up your social media. So if you're going to be a person that's putting on in one thing, just be prepared to put on in every situation that you go to, because ultimately people are buying into you. Everybody is an on-air talent. Everybody's a journalist. Everybody wants to be, even if they don't have the skill set, says that they are. I think you have to be very open with what you want to say, what your message is, how you want to do what you want to do, and make sure that you actually want to do it. I totally agree with Zach when it comes to inner work, especially during the quarantine. A lot of us have been like sitting down and doing some soul searching and making sure that through this pause, you come out more clear on what it is you're here to do and what it is you're here to say. Because at this point, we all have a responsibility to be just aware of the power of our voices. And so if you're trying to fit into a place, most likely that place isn't for you. A lot of the times, if you're just yourself, you'll find a place that is perfect for who you are and who you want to be.
Gia, you mentioned social media. We have a question here from Katya, who says, how do those of us who are journalists and may not have the social media presence compete with influencers in this digital age?
Say, look here, bruh, okay? The game done changed, okay? Let me tell y'all something, okay? The game done changed years ago, okay? Look, on the wee times of Instagram. Like, I remember when 106 in Park did their national competition and they were looking for a host and they ended up choosing Bow Wow anyway, and Angela Simmons and like everybody, and it was like the biggest dupe of all time. Well, I definitely, if you look up like Gia Peppers 106, it's still up on the internet. I still have it. I don't care. I'm that girl. Like, you can see every mistake you could see it all. Go ahead, just look it up. I don't care. But I remember then feeling like, okay, all of this is really a popularity contest. So at this point, I don't like the term influencer for myself personally, but I do know that my work and who I am influences people. So when people reach out to me and they're like, can you share this? I'm like, let me make sure this is something, one, that I want to do, and two, that I know will connect with the following and the community that I have online. It is something that you may have to figure out what works for you in terms of building your platform and what people like. If you are looking to build your social media following, see what people like the most and try to continue to do that. Like, but don't do it in a way that you feel forced to. Find that marriage of something that you actually like doing on social media and seeing where people connect to it most. It might just be you talking about your work. You can talk about what you love to do. Talk about how you put a piece together. Like, a lot of the times people just like to hear your personal thoughts on social media. And it's a lot of journalists that I know who do work for publications will say, you know, these thoughts are my own, just to make sure that there's no gray area. But I do think it is smart, especially as a person who, like many of us, has multiple streams of income, to not cut yourself off from that that stream. Just because at the end of the day, you can have 5,000 followers, there's still micro influencing, and people can still reach out to you if it is something that you believe in and something that you don't feel will impact you ethically. But for me, I had to learn how to balance the two of making sure that I was great to show up on set. But if they got a photographer while I'm there hosting and they get the cute little behind the scenes, honey, take the pic. And we're back. So, and then you post it. So it all comes together.
Can I ask?
I love that. Yeah, go ahead.
Original question from what I was hearing, the person was asking about how they're comparing themselves against how to stand up against influencers, I guess, journalistically. So for me, like, I've always been a journalist first, and I just so happen to like social media. So in the days of Snapchat and all that, I'm sharing, and like with my work and all the sharing and things that I did, like the growth happened and is happening. But my main offer for that person that asks that question is to never compare yourself. We all know that. It ain't gonna work no matter which way you're doing it.
Ever.
It literally never works. To Gia had an interview with Natasha Rothwell the other day, and she talked about, and I literally typed it right before she said it, like, compare yourself to yourself. You know, look in that mirror and you be that person that you're trying to be. It doesn't matter what this influencer is doing, because God knows, we all know it's all fake.
It's all fake.
Oh, it's also fake. And so to compare your real to somebody else's fake with a filter, no makeup days, like that doesn't matter, because to the person asking that question, I'm hoping that you are a journalist and you are working. Mm-hmm. Your work should be what is valuable to you. And as long and as fickle as the internet is and this world is, what I've learned in the past 14 years is that good content will always win. Like, literally, like, people laugh about, oh girl, you're always viral. This, that, how do you do it? I have never once sat down and said to myself, how do I create a viral moment? Never Googled it. I didn't even know what it was. I just knew that the stuff that I create, people attach to for some reason. And for me, it's been because I know that I'm creating quality, and I'm bringing forth quality. So to that person, bring the quality, be consistent with the quality, use social media because that is a vehicle of these days, but do not ever look at these people with the hashtags and hashtag ads and think that you're less than. Because you can get that stuff too. To Gia's point, there are people and there are devices now where people can check your influence for real. They can check your engagement for real. I have more engagement than Kim Kardashian. I do not have more followers than Kim Kardashian, but to have more engagement, that's crazy, because I thought her people were highly engaged. It doesn't matter about the numbers. So never compare yourself, do the work, be consistent, and just share based on you wanting to share your good work.
Yep.
And I would, to add to that, I think, like, especially because it's in a journalism context, is that if you fight to become, you know, the primary source or the expert in a field, your influence will kind of always be there. So like for example, I realize I've been taking a lot of breaks from social media in pandemic, because like I host a Twitter show. So I'm on Twitter all day, 500,000 people yell through that Twitter feed, and I needed a break. And I spent years doing really in-depth reporting on police and police violence. And, you know, when Ahmaud Arbery was shot the other day, I took a break and I came on and I tweeted a few things, and the tweets were about the shooting and what we know about police violence, and that's it. And then I like checked my phone the next day and was getting tagged on Facebook with screenshots. And I was like, that's so funny. I didn't think this was actually going to do anything, because I don't really tweet right now. But I do know that people in the world know that I'm a good source when we're thinking about these issues. And no one can ever take that away from you. If you've done the years of work to make sure that you've invested in that type of story, invested in those types of communities, and have the trust of those communities, that stays. People remember that. You can show up 10 years later and still be that girl. So I think that's what you should focus on, is the work of that, and the authenticity and the specialness of the work in you in that. And then your reach will grow there. And the numbers really don't mean a lot, because as we know, I mean, you see it every day on Twitter, like the most random person has the funniest tweet that gets 200,000 retweets out of nowhere. And it shows you that, like, it's really about, like, is it special? Is it unique? Does it give us something new that we haven't seen? So if you're over here trying to replicate someone else, you're already losing, because that's not what people are looking for. They're looking for something new, different that they can get behind and rally around. So like, yeah, I think what everyone's saying, do not look at other people's stuff, look at what you're doing and making sure that that stuff's good. And then it will come after that.
I think this is a great place to bring up Noelle's question. She asks, that she says they're working in a traditional journalism role as an MMJ at a local TV news station, but they're really interested in arts and culture. So they've been freelancing for some outlets on the side, as well as sharing their own creative writing on social media. But they've struggled with how to balance their news and their reporting side with their content creation, creative side. I'm gonna throw that to you, Zach, first.
I mean, it's difficult. It is. But I think what you have to remember or know now is that, news, what we're trained to know is that it's supposed to be objective and that there are objective ways. And journalists are kind of these like hollow people that just go out into the world and like are just conduits for different stories. And that's not the case. And I think we as Black people know when we're reporting on Black lives, whether a good and happy story or a terrible and negative story, that it hits us and it touches us. And that, journalism has been built on the lie that the lie of objectivity. And we know that's just whiteness. So when you're having those negotiations with yourself of like, okay, I want to be a creator, I want to put more myself out there, will that hurt my journalism? I think that is, a symptom of white supremacy, saying that you as a Black creator need to be more like buttoned up, cannot show your own self, cannot be out there. Because, Barbara Walters is out there. She's living her life, Diane Sawyer, all these girls, everything about them. But I think you as a Black person, like you were having that fear. And you got to be thoughtful around it because, if you are creating certain content that may influence your journalism, then you should probably think about that. Like, is that going to make it not as ethically sound? You have to make good judgments there. But in terms of like being more of yourself and reporting the news, I think you definitely can do that. And I struggled, I would say a lot of the beginning of last year when I pivoted from, I was an editor-in-chief for many years. And that's a very like, I didn't think you're supposed to know much about an editor-in-chief. Like I'm kind of this like, I sit in this little tower, this office, and like I kind of like commission people and I work in the background and kind of Oz-like. And I realized I was kind of like not fair for myself and for other people because like I also have a lot to contribute to the world. I also have insights and thoughts about the world around me. So when I started hosting a show, my talent coach was like, girl, you have to like, you can tell that you're turned off inside. Like we can see that you're like reading the prompter and you're there, but you're not there. And she's like, I know what you're doing. You're getting in that news head where you think like you can't be present. But she's like, you deserve to be present and your audience wants you to be there. They want to see you. And that's why they're tuning in. So we have moved into a place in which if you are in a public facing job, like a host, or you want to be, have a large following on social media, people want you. They don't just want like the news you're telling. They want to see how you're responding to the news. And if that's something that you're wanting to do, I think that still is news. That's still important because news is not objective. It's subjective. And I think when we say things like, police are killing Black people is racism, that's news. And that is, not subjective. It is both subjective and objective, I guess, in a way. But you can still have yourself in it. And I think like, just go for it and be smart about it. And make sure you look out for conflicts of interest. I think you're good to go.
In putting this panel together, one of the things I was that I'm often interested in as president of NABJLA is kind of cross-generational conversation. And we have a question here from Danielle Masterson, who first asks how to actually make the transition from being a print freelancer to a content creator, but also asks, do you think there is a place for older Black women in this conversation around content creation? I'm going to bring that to Gia to start.
I would say if you have a phone, you have an outlet to create content. The iPhone or Android, or I don't know much about the Android's video abilities, but I do know that you can still create content. And if you have any of those, and if you feel the need to go buy a DSLR, you can absolutely start creating content, filming yourself and putting it out. I don't think there's any reason why anyone should feel like they can't start. That's inner work, and that's the things that you have to start believing about yourself and your responsibility to show up and say what you need to say. Because as everyone's been saying, our stories are so important, and there will be someone who listens if we have the courage to say what we really want to say. As far as the age portion of the question goes, Danny just interviewed Tabitha, who is a mom, a vegan chef, a wife, gorgeous as ever. But what people love about her is her personality, and she reminds us of all of our family members. So I don't think there's an issue when it comes to age per se. I mean, there's also, I mean, this is getting far. I don't want to offend anybody, but there's also like a 80-year-old grandmother who be out here wearing Fashion Nova. Like, if you got it, sis, you got it. Don't ever think that you can't start wherever you are. There's all of the people that we look up to, from the Ava DuVernays and, you know, all of those talented, beautiful women who took off later in their life. They're always preaching it's never too late to start. So for me, in my opinion, I think if you believe that you have something to say and you really feel forced, if there's something in you that you feel like you can put into this world that you haven't seen, and even if you have seen it, no one's going to say it like you say it. So just try to get out of your head and create something. And just, if you create something and send it to like 3 of your closest friends and get their honest feedback, see what they feel, and then just try it. You never know.
And I think part of it, right, is about adaptability. It's about, you know, one of the reasons Tabitha Brown is living her best life right now is because she figured out how to use TikTok.
Okay.
You know, she was using IG, right? And like, unfortunately, I think we have these conversations and it often ends up being kind of an age split in terms of like who we think can be a content creator and who can't. But it's about, you know, figuring out how to take these tools that are available and like use them to your particular advantage.
Yeah.
I want to go to another particular question that we have here. Where was it? I'm gonna direct this question at Zach. Cody asks, is there a certain level, we don't talk enough about money, right, y'all? And Cody brought up a question about money, so I'm gonna segue into that. FYI, get yourself ready. So Cody asks, is there a certain income level you reached as a freelancer on the side before you decided to do it full time? So I'm coming to you, Zach, and then I'm gonna answer.
For me, when I was in Chicago at the time. I've always had multiple streams of income. I think it was like $65,000-$70,000 in Chicago that I hit that level and was like, okay, we can do this. I can pay rent. I'm not balling out of control, but I can like invest in the things I need to do to build up my own career and pay for flights if I need to get somewhere and stuff like that. So I think that was a good number for me. In New York, it would be different. I remember specifically being offered a job in New York for $60,000 early in my career, I forget what year, but as a reporter. And I was like, I think I can freelance. I think I can trust myself in hustling and figuring out how to make that by myself and like have more freedom to do more things. So I think there's like, you look at your expenses and you think about what your overhead is and what kind of, can you go to brunch every Sunday? Can you not? These things you're willing to give up. And then you go from there, because what I've learned as I've also increased my income, like you're always finding new ways to need more money. Like it's like the fucked up thing. So but like it's like the death of capitalism. Is the more money you make, really the more problems you have, the more things you want. So I think when I began to feel comfortable, like walking away from like one full-time job, it was around that 60K period area. 60 in Chicago. Chicago is very important. Like that cheap real estate, cheap apartments.
The city matters. The city matters in terms of the decision that you're making walking away from your job. I just wanted to add, so I got laid off 2 days before Christmas last year. And so it forced me into freelancing.
So the timing of those things are always so beautiful.
It's always so cute. You get laid off in the middle of a pandemic or something. And it's like, oh my God.
That's fine.
It's always like that. But I think what has helped me in my freelancing is just a general comfortability with like asking for what I feel I deserve. And I think with a lot of freelancers sometimes, especially when I was in my role at Out, I was as an editor in Out, and so I had a very small budget and I needed to do what I needed to do to make that budget stretch. That doesn't stop, in my eyes, a freelancer from saying, actually, I can't do this piece for this $100 you want me to do. You want to do a piece for $100 that's 1,000 words?
Yeah.
That's a penny a word, I think.
How about that?
That's less than it's something like that. I'm not a math whiz. But the point is, I feel like we don't, a lot of us, especially Black folks, like we don't know how to ask for what we feel we're worth. And then a lot of times we don't even know exactly what we should be worth. So for Danielle, for Gia, start with Danielle. How did you get comfortable assuming you're comfortable now, asking for what you're worth, or at least asking for more than what they're trying to give you?
It's so crazy because I've gotten to the point of not needing validation for how talented I am or how great my work is, but it's taken a lot to get to that point. And when it comes to me attaching the monetary amount to it, especially as a freelancer, I lean on my friends. I lean on Gia. People, people that have done this thing and have done this similar work. And I'm like, well, how much? Because for one, I feel comfortable. And for two, like, I don't want to lowball myself because, and this might connect to something earlier, talking about freelancers versus being a part of these places, but I've been getting, because of how I am on social media and who I am, I've been getting, brand deals or offers as I was working for these places, right? And to have somebody come here and throw an amount at me that is so greatly, vastly different from what I was getting working at that desk. I was like, Netflix approached me to host a watch party and sent me a ridiculous number. And I was like, to sit down with my friend, okay. Let me think about this, because to Zach's point, like, I maxed out at my editorial career as a producer, writer, host, all these slashes, the editor, like actually editing video, all these slashes that I did, I maxed out at 90. And I never thought that I would get that. And I had to fight for that. So it took me understanding the value of my work, being steadfast in it, not being afraid to lose something based on me knowing my worth. I'm still working with that. Just lost the Amazon check knowing my worth a little much. They were like, no.
That gets me though, because y'all got the money.
But that's the thing. You're gonna constantly run into these battles because honestly, and I'm getting this from specific intel from these companies, they don't look at us. They don't look at us, which is crazy because statistic-wise, numbers-wise, Black folks spend money. Poor Black folks spend money. Wealthy Black folks spend money. Black folks spend money. Other demographics, you can't always put a pin on it, but Black folks are going to spend. So in my mind, I'm thinking you need to always align with people who have Black audiences, people who serve Black stories. So I have to always go that extra route. And I don't know if other influencers or other types are doing this when they are pitching themselves, but I got to send you Nielsen reports. I got to send you stats and percentages and figures and facts, not even about myself, but about the fact that Black makes green. So I have to do all of that. And because I am also doing all of that, yes, I do expect this amount when you were only trying to give me $2,000. So it's a confidence thing. It's not being afraid to lose that job. It's knowing, also that other people are being approached and doing it for pennies and an envelope. You know what I mean? That also messes with us in our rates, because if they know that they can go to Hey Girl Hey and she's going to do it for $3 and then you're asking for $1,000, of course they're going to go with $3. So it's a constant fight, and it sucks that it's a constant fight when you're Black and you have to overprove yourself. So it's just, I think, growing into the space of being confident in your work and knowing that the dollar amount you attach to it is what you're worth, and being unapologetic about it.
And so, just to piggyback off that, someone that's like, I've been an executive of a media company and all this stuff, and I know what it's like on the back end of paying people. Like, if you lowball yourself and you become the person that's cheap, you will keep getting calls for the short term, because like long term, you also can't afford to do that forever. So sure, you may be getting it for a little bit, and it may help build up your reel or do a few things so you'd be strategic about it. But if you become notoriously the cheap person, you will be exploited, and also the quality of the work that you're being tossed will just drop. And I just know so many people that's happened to, that were like doing it for $50 here with this brand here, and it just was not, there was no strategy in place, and it hurt them in the long term. Where folks that really demanded and carved out a space and showed why they're worth that, it really kept building and building. Because I've been in situations where when I was at The Advocate, I couldn't afford a certain writer, but when my friend that's the editor-in-chief of New York Magazine called me and was like, I need help finding someone, that person was top of mind because I was like, oh, well, you have the budget. Let me refer that. Because a lot of the people in the back end are also their own network and they're going to refer you. But if you become this person that's, you know, not seen as high quality and willing to do anything for anyone, because like editors and executives also have egos. And if I see like, there were so many times at Grindr and Into where I would work with someone and then all of a sudden they were at like my competitor and I felt such a type of way that I would be like, you know, maybe next time we're not working together and all that. So like build relationships with the right people, demand certain things of yourself, know your worth, and keep getting more. And I tell this to everyone, no matter how much someone offers you, always ask for more and negotiate. Like you should always negotiate no matter what.
Never
And even
accept that first thing that they bring to you. But I'm curious too, because we're speaking at a point like we've had some years in, but does that still apply to the younger ones, the ones that are breaking in? Like how do they decide whether or not, okay, if I take this for 30K, am I being crazy? Am I being like, should I go? Like, how do they know?
Wait, Tre'vell, what was the original question?
The original question, oh, let me find it. What did I make up the question? I can't remember.
It was about budget, right? It was figuring out.
It was about knowing your worth.
Yeah.
It was about negotiating. It was about figuring out how you get comfortable asking for what you feel you're worth.
About the younger ones, because I feel like experience, you do get more comfortable. And yeah, you do get more comfortable. You've had more jobs. You have more of a rate sheet. But like for the people that are building that, what does that look like?
I mean, I didn't get to answer the first part, so I'm going to answer the first part for that, because I think when you are starting as a freelancer, a lot of times you're forced into freelancing. Oh. So you have to figure out what your basis is and what your exact expenses are, like Zach was saying, so you can understand, all right, so if I do 4 of these a month, I'll have enough to cover this, this, and that. If that's how you start initially, and again, ask your friends who have been in this for a while too, and start there, it's okay. But just as you go along, case by case, situation by situation, you will learn how much work and how much energy you spent on doing those projects. And the times where you felt like you weren't paid enough, you will regret it, because the cheap people always ask you for the most things ever.
And they add to it. They add to the thing that they originally.
Yeah, they'll be like, so we have $1,500 to do this, this, and that, and then we want is perfect. And then actually, do you mind helping on a call? And then actually, no, honey, no, you paid for this.
Yep.
This didn't include a social care. This didn't include your tweet. This didn't include me.
Get paid for social. That's another.
Yeah. You need to make sure that one, what are you actually asked for, every single detail of what they are asking you to do. What is the ask? You want me to show up here? What time do I need to be there? Oh, you need me there 2 hours early? Okay, that's extra time that I have to do to get ready to get there. How am I getting there? Is travel covered? Is ground transportation covered? Are you covering my flight and hotel? Are you covering my glam? If you are a woman, add in extra for glam. And shoot, if you like glam and you need glam, add in extra for glam. Because if they expect you to be somewhere, you need to feel as comfortable as possible. If they aren't putting in enough for glam, then say, okay, cool. So I won't be there that extra hour earlier because I had to get ready, and try to add in some on the back end for your own money, for your own. If you have to pick up your own makeup brush, add in an extra $300. Yeah. Like figure it out. Like figure out what works for you. But I will say, you will learn situation by situation. Like I remember my first rates were like 1,000 or something to host events. Now it's closer to 5 to 7.5K to host events. But I'll talk to Lovey or like all these girls who have been doing this forever. Mind you, these people have 7 agents and they out here, but they'll get 25 to 30K to do these things. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, there's money out here. You just have to figure out exactly. And again, it's just case by case. I can go to different places and they'll pitch me more. And I'm like, oh, you want me to host for that? Oh yeah, I'll do that. That's fine. Yes. No, that's fine. You said like Made in America with title. And again, please make sure this is a safe space, please, y'all, because I'm just giving y'all tea. So y'all are aware of what these brands have, because if we're not here to support each other and talk about money, then what are we doing? certain brands for these major festivals, run it up. Spotify has money. Tidal sometimes has money. Run it up. Like, figure out, again, situation by situation. And then on the other side, if the opportunity is not going to pay you what you're worth, is the visibility going to put you in front of the people that you want to get to know your brand and your face? So like, I remember when I first started hosting, I know I wanted to work for like HBO a lot and Insecure and do things like that. And I believe I took a gig hosting something like for free, but I knew that the HBO team was going to be in the building. And then that led me to having conversations to hosting their first ever Insecure Fest, which was what they did when they shut down this LA like soccer field. Long story short, know where your face and your work is going to be, so then you can have a strategy as to why this situation isn't going to give you enough money. And if it isn't, what are you actually getting from it? And those free opportunities, like creating your own content, you don't know who's going to pop in on your lives, on anything. So just figure out, strategy is everything. If you can figure out as a freelancer how to maintain great relationships, but also spark new ones by what you're doing, you can go a long way. You just got to be smart about it.
Very much so.
Yeah, and then I would to also answer part of the question you asked, Danielle, about for the newer people. One thing that I often say to some of the friends that I have that, you know, have less visibility or, you know, want to get into freelancing more is that you might end up taking, similar to what Gia said, you might end up taking an assignment or doing something that, you know, is a couple $100.
Yes.
But the idea should be that you want to build from that, right? And so is it going to put you in a publication that you really want to have in your bio? Is it going to get you to work with an editor that you know is very connected with somebody else in the industry? Like, those are the things to consider. I think we had a question here from Jasmine Jones. If you're starting out, she says, what is the correct amount to ask for if you don't have a track record? Ooh, well, girl, this question, you said if you don't have a track record of good work. Well, if you don't have a track record of good work, I can't help you there. Because you need to be good. But if you mean work in general, then I think it is about, you know, one of the questions that I tell people that they should always ask is like, what's the budget?
Yeah.
That gives you an idea of where they want to start, but it should always be for you a starting point. So if they say, oh, we got a couple $100 to work with it. Okay, cute. Well, my rate, I always say, you know, double it. If you're just starting out, double it, try doubling it and see what you know, provisions that you can work into it. But like, try not to do anything for free unless it's going to do something for you that you can exploit or manifest into something else later. And then always negotiate. Always let them tell you what the budget is, or what they're gonna lie to you about what the budget is, FYI. And so always go up. So we have about 15 minutes or so, because I want to respect you all times. I'm going to cycle through the questions that we have here, and hopefully, I'm going to pop it to one of you to answer. That way we can get them all taken care of. So I'm going to start with the questions that were submitted in advance. So Shar Jossel asked, what has been the biggest risk and the biggest reward in expanding from, quote, traditional journalism? I'm going to throw that to Zach.
I would say getting in front of the camera was the riskiest and biggest reward for me. I very much thought I was going to be just, you know, the traditional journalist, very, I don't know, I was an investigative journalist. I was like, no one sees you, you hide and you do these big things. But I realized when I got in front of the camera and could advocate for the stories I was telling more and putting myself out there more was, it did pan out. I mean, obviously there were days I got dragged on Twitter or something, but I think putting myself out there more and putting me forward was the greatest risk and reward. Because also there's not a lot of people like us out there. There wasn't like a big investigative Black journalist doing these stories that I was looking at the time. It's like Wesley Lowery was also coming up at Washington Post. So everyone was just kind of like doing it. So yeah, I would say that was one of the bigger things. Also going into tech, big thing. Grindr could have, I said no to an NPR deal to do Grindr, and everyone was like, why would you do that? because it's NPR. But I think just like following the resources was the best, the biggest risk and biggest reward.
I love that. I'm gonna throw this to Gia. This is from Darasha. What steps were you all making in and after college to set you up for success and land you that first real opportunity?
Interning, always. I think a lot of people have taken the power out of interning. One thing that no one can teach you is what happens when you're actually in these spaces, in these fields, on camera, figuring it out for yourself. So interning, I had interned at the Wendy Williams show, live with Kelly and Michael at the time, various WPGC here with Donnie Simpson and Big Tigger. Like, I was interning every single semester after sophomore year until senior year. But when I graduated, we were also in the middle of a recession. So that didn't mean I had a job. It just mean I had a whole bunch of experience, and I needed that first opportunity to really take me to a place where, you know, it takes work to get work. So I did a lot of things for free just to get my clips up, because I knew certain people would need to see that you were published in a magazine or on a really great website that gets a lot of traffic, in order for them to let you in their doors. And so I would say intern, learn as much as you can. You're not just there. I know there's this crazy thing, like I never got paid for an internship more than like $35 a week, but I feel like if they're not, again, don't lowball yourself. They paying people, go get your check. But if this is an internship that you feel like you'll know so much more about what it is you want to do, then go and intern and make those relationships. I still have a lot of those relationships to this day from my internships.
Danielle, is a journalism degree necessary to break into journalism and to pivot into hosting and other content creation?
Sadly, because I have a journalism degree, no. It's just not anymore, to be honest. And I say that because I have watched people like Mouse Jones, who even says himself that he is a dropout. He does not have even his diploma, but he has been able to create a space for himself, not only through entertainment, through a lot of the things. Him and Gia are booked on a lot of the same things. So they're like, you know, do a lot of the same moments, but he also has a sensibility of story. Like, I listen to Quarantine Nightly, which is his new podcast. And I'm like, I'm literally blown away because it's a Black man from the hood doing news of America from a Black man from the hood's lens. And I don't see that in a lot of spaces or places. And it's beautiful. So sadly, because I spent so much time and energy to get my degree,
Same.
a lot of money, a lot of sacrifice, but
A lot of Sally Mae.
just a lot of phone calls. It's not necessary fully, but it is helpful. Like, I won't say that it's not a thing. Like, I have learned a lot. I had a lot of training from school, but times have changed, and a lot of the things that happen in the space of journalism, you learn on the field anyway. So if you're out here reporting, if you're out here doing your thing on your own, it does make sense to align yourself with someone like Zach, someone like Gia, to be like, hey, pointers, but not necessarily you shouldn't say like, oh, I need school. You need to be schooled in some way. Yeah. There needs to be some type of, official learning, not just, I'm just doing this stuff on my own. There should be a way that you're actually learning some of the tools, because it's not just a thing that you can do because you can turn on an iPhone and a ring light. Yeah. It's really not. That's not journalism. Those are opinions. Those are hot takes. So we just have to we do have to understand that there's a difference between journalism and media personality.
Yeah. I agree. You ain't got to tell me that. That's what my master's degree says. That it's like, girl, we different.
Congratulations on your following, but there is a difference.
Amen. Zach, Simone in the room asked, they say they just became a senior in college and are looking at jobs and internships, trying to distinguish and decide between interning for either hard news or entertainment. Could you give some quick pros and cons of hard news versus entertainment? Because you've done both.
Yeah. My big thing, I mean, I come from a news background. I actually began in op-eds and opinion writing. So my very first job was writing opinions. And an editor came to me, Spencer Ackerman, and he was like, I have some advice for you. Anyone can have an opinion, but if you can learn the trade of reporting, you'll have a job forever. And that like really shook me because I was like, I want to be an op-ed columnist. Like, what are you talking about? But what he was saying is that like, if you have the skill sets of journalism, which is why I don't have a journalism degree, but the things you learn in J school are important, of like sourcing, getting the right subjects, vetting people. Those are incredible skills that transfer across many industries. And I think that from my perspective in a lot of entertainment journalism, is that like people, due to this rise of influencers, they're hiring people that are not prepared and are a little, I think sometimes too softball on people and don't know how to have really good conversations or go deeper with people. And I do think news forces you to go deeper with things. It makes you really get to the heart of things really quickly and in these really structured ways. So I think like, again, reporting, just learning how to report anything through a wide range of journalism or the reporting skill is really useful across different vectors. But also, I have learned so much being in an entertainment space. Like I walked into hosting the show because I've been on NPR and all these other things that were very just talk about the news. But I was that person for a while that looked down on just like being a host of a show. And I was like, oh, that's so easy. And it's not easy. It is not easy. It is really hard to have high energy. These celebrities do not want to talk to you most days. They want to get the hell away from you. And you got to like get them comfortable within 5 seconds, make them want to share something with you they've never said before, and like make them not want to hit you and then also want to come back later so your show's not canceled. So entertainment also teaches you a lot about being with people, because we all know those awkward ass J school students or journalists with a hard J that are really good reporters but terrible people. Like entertainment people are really good people typically. Not all of them really know how to be people. So I think it's like, think about your own, what are your pluses and minuses and your own skills, and then look at those two things and think about the path. The last 2 years of doing entertainment have really helped me even in news, because I really see that like, if you can get X celebrity to talk about X major issue, it goes way further for popular culture and impact than just telling a story where no one's really looked at it. So celebs and entertainment do help you get there.
Yeah, I want to read out this comment from Veronica Hendricks, who's one of our veteran members at NABJLA, particularly for Daniela, who asked the question earlier, but also anybody who might be streaming on Facebook. And she basically started by saying that she started an in-home podcast from her kitchen during the pandemic. She cooks and shares stories about being a foodie, also does some things on the radio here in Los Angeles, 94.7 The Wave. She says, this has been amazing, and now I'm looking to ask for what I am worth. It can happen. Just wanted to share. I share that because, she is a veteran member of our organization, and I think is someone who has made the pivot very well from journalism, and then she does some communication stuff for the city, and now she's doing food reporting on the side with her podcast. So shout out to her. Question for Gia, from Kim, how do you carve out your passion without making content that is reactionary or shaped by the whims of this very turbulent world?
How do you carve out? Say it one more time.
She says, how do you carve out your passion without making content that is reactionary or shaped by the whims? I think she's asking, like, how do you make your shit good? How do you make your stuff stand out from everything else that's out there?
Right. I mean, I think that question is better for Danielle Young, because she's the viral contentista. You give me the next one, honey. Go get that to Danielle.
Go ahead, Danielle.
Okay, give me the original one more again.
The original, she was asking, how do you make your content stand out? And how do you make it not necessarily reactionary to the moment, but like, I guess, timeless in a way?
It's a good question. I think it speaks to something I was saying earlier. I don't necessarily worry about creating something that's going to be viral. I create something that I think matters, and therefore people can latch onto it in that way. I have been also creating comedic commentary around quarantine. So I'm doing what this person is saying, like, how do you not do that? So I'm like, I'm doing that. But what's timeless about what I create, I think it's my comedic voice. I use comedy to relate to people. I cry, I go through, I do this, I'm in quarantine alone, but I laugh about myself going through this. I have moments where I'm just like literally freaking out, and I'm just like, I know other people are. I had an anxiety attack, and on the tail end of it, I turned my camera on so that I could use it in my video, because I was like, oh, maybe other people are crying. So I think what I do is create from relatability, create from bringing people comfort and joy. And that, I think, creates timeless content. I hope that creates timeless content. I think I can still go back to a lot of my viral pieces, and they last. Angela Bassett reciting Shakespeare, Denzel Washington rapping Cardi B lyrics, but also like, you know, moments where Cynthia Erivo's talking about the Black and British conversation. It doesn't necessarily, for me, those are trendy, like especially that conversation, Black and British, it's a trendy moment, but I allowed for myself as a journalism student to really ask her questions that made her approach it, and to make her really talk about it instead of have it be like, oh, let me give you this canned answer. Mm-hmm. So to Zach's point earlier, like the training is necessary because it allows you to have a different mindset around how you form your questions. Me being a producer on top of all of it, I now think of ways, I'm like, oh, that can go with that piece. And if I put that together, that's just people are gonna hear that message. Mm-hmm. So it's just, I've been able to increase the skill set to be able to create things that hit, that feel good.
Love it. You answered it. Yes, thank you. Gia, Alexis Brown in the room asked, how long into you branching out on your own did things begin picking up for you? And how did you motivate yourself to not give up or try something else?
Yeah. Well, shout out to podcasts and sermons and all of the things that I personally do to stay motivated. I think you have to be very well acquainted with what you want to say in this world and why you are doing this. For me, I believe in God. I am very spiritual. I'm a very big person when it comes to like staying in my Bible, staying in my word. That's what keeps me when everything is going wrong, or a job that I really, really wanted, I couldn't get, or a no comes that was really, really something that I have been wanting for and praying for. So for me, I think you have to have something, either it's a perspective or something that's bigger than your day-to-day detail-oriented life that keeps you going and keeps you on the path when things may try to knock you off, because life going life. So you have to figure out what your bigger purpose is and be ready to pivot when things happen, just because if you really want to do this, there's not going to be a person, a no, an obstacle, a thing that will stop you. All of us here are hustlers. And the reason why we're here is because we didn't let no stop anything that we were doing. If it was no, if you want to be like Zach, learn from it and figure it out. If it's a no and you don't have a gig anymore, create your own content and make it viral like Danny. If you want to be a person who shows up in this world as just yourself, be yourself and share that. I think you have to figure out why you want to do this. What a lot of people think this looks glamorous. It takes 0.1 seconds to take a picture. You have no idea what happened throughout the day before that picture happened or what happened right after. Don't let these little moments fool you. It is not as easy as it looks. So I definitely say, if you are that person that needs that extra push to keep going, understand that the main people that we see that are making it and killing it in this game are the people that just never gave up. At the end of the day, you just don't give up. You have to be relentless in your pursuit of your dreams. And you have to have a vision and a plan. So like, make it clear, write down what you would want to say, where you think your work aligns the best, and work for those things to happen.
And
definitely,
that because you were just preaching, Gia. Something I've learned in the past few years is definitely figuring out a purpose. You know, I'm not the most religious person. I've become more spiritual, but having this larger thing and reason which you do the work you do, and not just seeing your work as, you know, the title of anchor or reporter, but seeing like what the real core of that is that you're doing. Are you telling stories? Are you connecting communities? Are you voice is what's going to get you out of bed every day, get you through those no's. Because I was a person that thought, just get the editor at large title, become an anchor, do these things. And when those jobs disappear due to economic issues, due to various other issues, I had the breakdowns. I disappeared. The girl got too drunk the next day, and she had hard times, and it was not fun. And of course, you're going to keep having those. But I realized I would lose parts of myself after jobs because that job was me, and I had to realize, no, that job is not you. What you're doing with that job is a purpose in which you can do in other things, and you have to be open to the places in which you do those things, and not so tied to the title or kind of the credential you get there, because those things can be taken away at any moment. And you don't need to fall apart after that. you got to get up the next day and try it again.
Yeah.
Can I add to
We're
that?
gonna do.
Tre'vell?
Go ahead.
Also, to offer to that person, the dream is not the promised land. It's just not. A lot of the times in these places, especially when the internet is involved, and oh my God, look at them, they got that campaign, they're hosting this thing, whatever your dream is, it's a temporary thing, because you can reach that and realize that's it. Like that hosting job that you really wanted, that you saw that girl get, she might have only got $1,500 for that job. That's all. That's all that moment could have been for her. You know what I mean? So you have to learn how to first appreciate the journey that you're on as an actual moment, instead of thinking of it as like, oh, I got to get to this thing, because that thing is fleeting. And you're going to have to constantly realize, to Zach's point too, we both have come through different places as far as being at publications and trying to work our way up from associate to this. I don't know about you, Zach, but getting to those places, I looked around and I was like, oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, don't get attached to that dream. Let it pivot when you reach those moments. And the journey is also just as beautiful. So appreciate it.
For our last question, go ahead, Gia.
So she said, how long did it take for things to actually pick up and become, I was very blessed to live with my great aunt for the first several years I was in New York. So shoot, you got to figure out what your basis is. For me, it definitely took a good 3 years before I was like, okay, I can move out. I can be here, because I was literally always on the Amtrak train hosting games for the Wizards, and then also never giving up my opportunities in New York. So you got to figure out what works for you. If you have a family member where you want to live, stay with that family member. You can freelance all you want, but you got to figure out what your circumstance looks like, and then go from there.
Last question. I want each of you to leave the folks that are tuning in with a quick resource that they might be able to tap into. If it's somebody that they should follow who's doing really great work, or is it a book that you think they should read? Is it a skill sharing program that you think, or a YouTube page you think they should tune into? Put one thing out there that you think they should tune into. I'm gonna go to Zach first, because I think he pulled something together.
Oh, I'm trying to think. Oh God. I don't even know. I don't know. I'm trying to think a resource, something. Is
there a person who's not in this conversation that you think is doing the good that people might want to check out the work that they're doing and potentially, learn some things from? That's another way of looking at the question.
I have somebody that I thought of, and they can give you some time. Before I say the person, I do implore that let that be you. You be the person, to that whole point I made earlier about the comparison, be what you're looking for, but also just know that just because you're motivated or inspired by somebody, that's not an action. So just make sure that you are motivating and inspiring yourself, one. But she, I believe, won a NABJ award, Natasha Alford over at the Griot. Natasha Sonia Alford. She is an Afro-Cuban, Afro-Latina, reporter, the people's journalist. I think that's her hashtag. She does really great work within news. I've met her as a hard news reporter. like Harvard girl, very smart, very well-rounded when it comes to Blackness, when it comes to everything that we should know, that we should be thinking about, concerned about. Like, I love to follow her via the Griot and via her own personal social media, which is Natasha S. Alford, ALFORD. Yeah, she's doing a lot of great work. They have a podcast. I think it's called For the Culture or Dear Culture, Dear Culture Pod. Really great work. And just really well-rounded journalist. Also young journalist, Darian. Love her. Her social, I feel like it's just Darian, like DARIAN on all social. Really great content around beauty and the intersection of race and feminism and just Blackness. She like digs into the science of beauty, which I'm like, girls they're not really doing that, especially at her age. There's another girl that works on the Essence brand, but their younger brand called Girls United, which I hate. This is a safe space. I hate the name Girls United, but I like what they're doing because it's younger Black. Yes, it's younger Black content, but this girl, Brooklyn White, she is like a Black pop culture savant, historian. Like, she did a piece about Left Eye's like fashion impact on the world and on entertainment. Like, she does just really dope stuff. She's also somebody I'm watching. And Cecily Bowen, she's doing her own thing, Bad Fat Black Girl. She came from our space. Like, she was doing her thing at Nylon Refinery, Unbothered, and all this, but now she's doing her own thing, Trap Feminism. She has really great perspective on Black women as it comes to our bodies and everything like that. So great resources, great journalists, great reads and watches, because you can watch a lot of them too.
Thank you. Either of you other two got somebody you want to shout out?
Ready. I have people, and I want to say Cecily for sure. Cecily and I went to school together. We were in the same gender studies program. We studied women's and gender studies together. So we were both non-J school trained, liberal arts trained.
Right.
So she's wonderful. So the people I really love, so good friend of Tre'vell and I, Sam Sanders, who's done some stuff at NABJ. I think Sam is a really great testament to being a Black man, navigating, going from hard news politics through to entertainment and having his own show at NPR and being a Black man in the midst of it, in a very, very white space for a long time. And he's incredibly giving of his time and a person that can help you think about these big legacy institutions and how do you navigate them and getting in. Raquel Willis, a colleague of Tre'vell and I's from Out Time, Black trans woman, activist, journalist. She creates work that I think, if you want to look at impact and change, like, she's a person to definitely look at if that's what you're looking to do with your work, is how do you do community work and journalism together. And then another person was Josie Duffy Rice at The Appeal, who's the president of The Appeal. I think she's just killing it, and The Appeal is doing incredible work around criminal justice and legislation and all this stuff. So a lot of these people, I think, are people you can go to see, like, journalism is not just about putting it in the newspaper, but how does it move from the page into the world and change the world around it, are the people I'm like really excited about.
And Miss Gia?
Well, so many people there's this Shelby, sorry, I'm getting her, okay. So her name is Shelby Ivy Christie, and she is all about like Black fashion. She knows everything about Black fashion. She has this really great Twitter that she does called bronze_bombshell, and she legit like finds all the sources of where all the biggest moments in fashion came for all of our favorite stars from the 90s, 80s, 70s up until today. She's great. Like, if you're watching The Last Dance, she'll pull the source of when Michael's sweatsuit came out and why it's so lit and who made it. Like, she's like one of those incredible people. Domiti Pongo is a MTV News journalist. He's incredible. He also hosts a show on MTV, which I'm gonna get because it's a really good show. He's another incredible journalist that I think is very aware of his voice and his power, and is really beautiful when it comes to storytelling and telling it from a place that's integral and fact-based, but also with emotion, the appropriate amount of emotion. Like, you believe him when he speaks. And the name of his show, it's on MTV. Why don't I
It's a
know
true crime show.
the crime? Yeah, it's a true
True
crime.
life crime, I think.
Yeah. Yes, he follows those stories that no one, there it is, true life crime that no one really looks into, especially when it comes to our people being killed. Taylor Crumpton, she's a really dope young journalist. Her name on Twitter is the Hot Girl Journalist, which I'm here for, and just here for it. And Sid Madden from NPR, she is the producer, an incredible music reporter. She produces the Tiny Desk concert series. So if you do not follow Sid, she's been a quiet force for so long. And lastly, Sylvia Obel. I mean, I'm sure everyone in here knows she's NABJ baby. She and Scotty just started. If you don't follow Scotty Beam, of course, Scotty Beam just started their Must Listen. What is it called? Listen.
Okay, now listen.
Because I'm like, I knew it was just Netflix.
On Netflix.
Yes, Strong Black Lead podcast. And Sylvia's been doing incredible work at Buzzfeed forever. And I'm excited to see what happens with her and Scotty as they continue these journeys with Strong Black Lead. So if you don't have all of those people, go follow all those people.
Definitely. Thank you all so much.
Wagner. Don't forget about Lindsay Peoples Wagner also.
Oh my God, yes, Lindsay.
Yes. Thank you all so much for joining me to answer one of the Facebook questions. My name is Tre'vell Anderson. They wanted to know my name, president of NABJLA, which brought you all here. Follow all of the folks that were in our conversation. I dropped their handles into the chat if you're in the Zoom room, and we'll place it under the live stream if you're watching on Facebook. Make sure you check us out at NABJLA Official and NABJLA.org. We have a second conversation for those who are interested coming up at 1 o'clock about Black men reporting on Black men in these particular times. So check that out if you are interested. Our Vice President Jared Hill will be hosting that. And as always, I say, stay Black, stay fabulous, and be sure to check out Zach, Danielle, and Gia and everything that they do. Thank you all so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Bye, guys.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.